name is Heather McGee, and this is the Happily Never After, a podcast that explores how life's endings can lead to a personal breakthrough. Because sometimes the end is just the beginning. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Happily Never After, a podcast where we explore how life's endings can lead to a new beginning. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate, review, and follow us wherever you are listening or watching the show today. Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons is an award-winning psychologist and associate professor at Emory University's Rollins School of Public Health, where she studies sexual wellness and liberation. She is one of the leading experts in her discipline, with her innovative work widely recognized in publications such as the Huffington Post, Essence, Ebony, the Wall Street Journal, and more. It's a long list, I can tell you. Dr. Hargons advocates for liberation and wellness within marginalized communities. Dr. Candice, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, I know this is probably the top question a lot of people have. Can you talk to us and describe a little bit of your work as a sex researcher? What does that mean?
I know. So first of all, it's a dream career. Didn't even know it existed. That was
I
that
can
was
get
coming
that.
up, right? So basically, I think about sex positive topics like orgasm, pleasure, desire, arousal, sexual health in a really broad way. And then I find all the things that relate to it, all the ways people talk about it. I'm a big, cute qualitative researcher, so I love having conversations with people about sex, what it means to them, what they hope for. And most of my colleagues are quantitative researchers, so they help me with the stat stuff and make sure that we have both.
That's a good combination. I work in research too, so I recognize what you're talking about, and those
Yes,
go hand in
yes,
hand. It's really
yes.
helpful. You mentioned a phrase that I think a lot of people hear, and I would love your expert, description or definition of what this is. We talk about sex positivity, or people will describe themselves as sex positive. In your view, what does that mean?
So I'll tell you first what it isn't. I think a lot of people make the assumption that sex positivity is you have to be willing and open to have sex with anyone, anywhere, anytime.
Oh
And
no.
I don't know how it got that rep, but I just want to myth bust that sex positivity is really about embracing your sexual self, thinking through what works best for you and not imposing that on other people. So it's about understanding that there are good, beautiful, amazing parts of sex that you are worthy of access to. And also that you don't get a right to say what other people do and do not have access to as it relates to sex and the sexual health markers that work for them.
Okay. That was something that was on the top of my mind, actually, because I do see it a lot. And I think I kind of know what it means, but I was very interested in your expert opinion, how that is defined.
Mhm,
Now, you wrote a piece for HuffPo that I thought was really interesting because you have a personal connection to your work.
mhm.
And the title of this piece is I'm a scientist who studies good sex for a living. Here's why I wasn't having any, about your personal journey. Can you tell us a little bit of your own sexual liberation journey?
So I think like most people, it evolves. There are times where it ebbs and times where it flows. But for me, after having my first son, it was 2021. I had just gotten tenure at the University of Kentucky. It was an amazing day. And then that evening, I experienced the symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy. And so basically, what that means is the egg had implanted in one of my fallopian tubes and it burst. Basically, I'm bleeding out from the inside. And I was in and out of consciousness. The medical professionals who came to my house and the ambulance were not helpful. My husband had to run me out of the house and put me in the ambulance himself. It was so traumatic. And then when I got to the hospital, one of the ways that, they train us to be psychologists is that we're able to kind of catalog, like, these are the things I'm going through in a way that is somewhat stoic. And they were like, so you should be in incredible pain, but you're in and out of consciousness telling us these symptoms. And I'm like, I'm trained for that. And then I would lose
Yeah.
consciousness. And it was so scary. But when I got out of surgery, I had to have emergency surgery. When I got out of surgery, one of the medical professionals was like, there's a cliff where at a certain point you lose an amount of blood and it's really hard to come back for it. And you were at the edge of that cliff
Oh,
and they
wow.
had to restore, I don't even know how much blood, but it really shaped my sexual experience for the rest of the summer because I was terrified to have sex with my husband. Like, and I write about sex, I read about it, And I just was so nervous that that would happen again, that I wasn't out of the
Yeah.
water. Even with using protection, and of course, I know how it works mechanistically, but
Yes.
trauma-wise, it was just it was I mean, I was really stuck for a while, and he was quite patient and, understanding because he was in the trauma with me and watching what happened and how I was treated. And so we talked about how we come back from that. What are some ways that we can connect intimately? How do I know when I'm ready? And those are all of the things that I trained to help other people with and that I had to learn and use for myself. And so for me,
Yeah.
sexual liberation was not feeling guilty about the time when I didn't have access to my full sexual self and really having that compassion that I ask others to offer themselves.
Now, you're talking about something I think a lot of women have dealt with because, in addition to medical emergencies, also when someone has given birth, like I
Yes.
feel like I hear it all the time where I mean, I'm sad to say, I think I see this post on a regular basis in my, Facebook mom groups
Mhm.
where someone will say, I had a baby 2 months ago and my husband really wants to have sex, but I'm not ready. I'm really
Mhm.
scared. I don't,
Yes.
I feel like that's a post that happens a lot and a lot of women think
Mhm.
that way. And you're describing, I don't know what you're describing, I think is fairly common of just not being ready, but you also feel the pressure sometimes with some partners, the expectation to move forward anyway.
Yeah, and I don't even for me, it wasn't even a partnered expectation. It was my sense of like, I do this for a living. I should be able to just get over
Right.
it. Right? It's like,
Right.
no, that is not how it works.
You're like, I'm going to become the sex researcher that doesn't have sex somehow.
Right. Right.
Now, Dr. Candice wrote a book. I'll hold it right here. Well, you can see it. It's called Good Sex Stories, Science, and Strategies for Sexual Liberation. And we're talking today about the end of bad sex. So, Candice, can you talk to us a little bit about how do you define good sex?
So whenever I ask people this question, I also share my definition. My top word is transcendent. Like, I wanna levitate, I wanna feel connected to the sacred and the divine, I wanna lose time. That is my number
Yeah,
1 word. I also want it to feel really good, like, delicious. I want it to be
I
delicious.
like that.
And the last one is that I want it to be relaxing. Like, afterwards, I wanna feel, like, all the endorphins and the oxytocin and closeness and the sleepiness, all of that.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes we focus so much on the mechanics of sex when really, well, I would love your opinion on this. I feel like the route to having really great sex is actually how safe you feel with your partner.
Mm,
What is the partnership look like there?
yes.
When a lot of time, I mean, that matters. Technique matters, but
Mhm.
I almost think we over-index on that part of it instead of the emotional side of what sex can be, which is emotional connection.
Yeah, I think technique can be learned faster than emotional safety can be learned.
Yeah.
So if you're working with a partner who has created a space of acceptance and welcome and curiosity and fun and creativity and all of these things that I call the good sex seasonings, the things that
Mhm.
flavor the mechanical parts of sex, which are more like sex staples, I think that you guys can learn and practice some really fun things together. But if you have a relationship context that feels threatening in any way,
Yeah.
whether it's physically or emotionally, it becomes much harder for most people to experience the type of sex they're worthy of. Good sex that is good to and good for everybody involved and not just one person.
Yeah. Well, and something I read in your book that I really appreciated. This I think we're kind of doing some myth busting today.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
something else you talk about in your book that I thought was really helpful, and you mentioned it at the top of our conversation, an expanded definition of sex. There are all different ways to have sex. And I would
Totally.
really love to, I read it in your book, but I would love for you to talk about how that works for you and how you see that expanded world of sex.
Mhm. So I got this actually from a book called Desire by Jen Venzel and Laura Fogel Mercy or Mercy Fogel.
Okay.
I think I mixed those up. Um, but in it, they talk about the coital imperative. And I had never heard that
Okay.
word before. So I love being introduced to new terms, but it's basically where most of us learned about the bases. Like first base is this, second base is this. Third bases is the home run is
Yeah.
P and V, right? And it's
Yes.
like once
Yep.
people get to the home run, they
Very
feel like
defined.
right, very defined. And it's like once you get to that, a lot of people forget that all those other bases were pleasurable. And so instead of seeing it like bases or stages that you go through, seeing it as a menu, a very large menu of options you have where it could be whatever people
Mhm.
find erotic, but it's the erotic connection you're creating and the ways that you engage that with each other to whatever level of joy, pleasure, fulfillment you choose for each other.
I feel like it's generally the way we're raised, it's a very
Mhm.
defined way of being, and there's such a bigger world of sexual
Yes.
connection that exists. Someone that I worked with a while back, they had a phrase that I thought was really great. They said, "Everyone who wants to have an orgasm gets one." And the thing I liked about was actually the
Ooh,
flip
I like
side of it.
that.
Yeah, I actually like the flip side of it where sometimes you don't.
That's
Sometimes that
right.
is not, like, the important part of it, and it really put the emphasis on what you want out of the experience, and it because I think sometimes people feel pressure, they feel bad if certain
Yes.
things don't happen, and it released that because, you get to decide what you wanna have happen. If that is really important to you on that day, we'll figure it out. But a lot of times it's not that, I think especially women, don't necessarily want that all the time, or it's just not
Mhm.
the night for it, and they are happy with what you were talking about, the expanded world of sex.
Yes.
That sometimes doesn't involve that, but it's still rewarding and emotional, and you get a lot out of it anyway.
Yeah. And I think that so one of the people that I follow closely, Dr. Lori Mintz, she talks about the orgasm gap. And because women, cis heterosexual women in particular, are at like 65% of the time they have orgasms, and heterosexual men are at 95% of the time having
Yes.
orgasm, she's like, okay, we need to close this gap. I'm 100% on board with that. So I don't want to
Yeah.
make it seem like, women should just give that up. But I also think that there's a part where
100%.
if you're for example, for me, I'm multi-orgasmic. So sometimes there are 3 on the table for me and 1 on the table for
Hmm.
my partner. So I think there is an option where you need to know, like, sometimes the best sex you can have may not involve an orgasm. It may just be pleasure
Yeah.
filled the whole way through in different ways that pleasure can come to you.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on something really important. I have several divorced friends, and one of them, while she's in a relationship now, but when she was dating, we kind of had a conversation about this, and I was like, oh, I'm going to remember this. She said, we put so much pressure on ourselves when we sleep with someone,
Yes. Yes.
that if they're in a heterosexual situation, to make sure man has an orgasm, and
Yes.
you will fake it, you will do whatever you have to, like, you don't she was like, "I don't usually even think about me, I'm just, like, trying to make him happy, and I
Uh-huh.
don't even think about myself." She said, "I tried something different with this person she started dating." She was like, "I stopped trying to make that happen. When I'm done, I'm done."
Yes.
And not in a selfish way, but it was in a, "I'm not gonna kill myself and fake." I think there's a line that you go over where it's too
Yes.
far, and it's okay to say, I don't think this is happening. This was fun, but let's try again tomorrow."
Yes. Yes. And I want people to be able to get to that point, and I want partners to be able to acknowledge that that's fine because nobody
Yeah.
it's not anybody's responsibility for your orgasm.
Yeah. Yeah, and people just put so much pressure on themselves to the point where they worry so much about the other person, and you should be giving
Yes,
and generous,
for
but
sure.
not to the point where you're not even involved. It's not about
Mhm.
you anymore at all. Like, I think we've gone too far when that happens. There's a story you tell in your book that I thought was really meaningful, especially because it was a lesson you learned from your mom. This was her quote, and I would love to hear more about the impact it's had on you. She found out that you and your boyfriend had moved to the next level, and she said, "You mean you've been out here giving him all the pleasure and not getting any for yourself?" What did that
Mhm.
conversation with your mom teach you?
It was so funny because, of course, in the moment, I was mortified.
Yeah, mom knows.
I was and so I was getting plenty of pleasure for myself, but I lied about it because for
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
reason, I thought that if I just told her I was not doing certain things, but I was doing other things, it would be better for
Oh,
my
right.
punishment
Yes.
sequence.
Yes.
And so for me, it was a reframe because it made me think, okay, prioritizing my pleasure and enjoying the experience is not the bad part about this. It's that I was sneaking around and not communicating with her, hey, I feel like I'm ready. I feel like this is the time. But
Mhm.
that wasn't the bad part. And it helped me be more communicative and thoughtful with partners moving forward about what I wanted. Now, one of the good things I can always say, I had this conversation a few years ago and it stuck with me, is that I wasn't the type of kid who did substances, drink, or smoked or anything. And so I was always making fully conscious decisions about my sexual partners and my sexual experiences. And I think that went a long way for how I could communicate what I did want and what I didn't want. And so that message helped me be more thoughtful and communicative about it. But I was not giving all the pleasure and not getting it for myself,
For the record.
for the record.
I just think, and this kind of goes to my next question, especially women are just taught there's like a good girl way to be, and it really
Mhm,
holds you back,
mhm,
I think, from
mhm,
living your fullest life. When you have clients who talk to you, maybe they're repressed, and I don't know if that's the
mhm.
word I exactly want to use, but they want to live a fuller life sexually, but they are scared to, they're not sure. And obviously you shouldn't ever do anything you're scared to do or you're not ready for. Don't do that. But they want to start branching out a little bit, and feeling more free in the
Yeah.
bedroom. You use the word liberation a lot.
Yes.
How can someone who is like holding back, unsure, where to go next, maybe they don't have confidence even for like dirty talk or,
Yeah.
things that
Yeah.
they want to move out in, how can that person start to make that happen in reality
For my
without a
definition
panic
of,
attack?
oh, right. My definition of sexual liberation is really being your authentic sexual self. And there are so many things in this world that try to make you be for women, a good girl, or in this narrow box, respectability politics, patriarchy, misogyny, all of these things. But
Yeah.
their goal is really to control you. And I love women who embrace their agency, but that doesn't mean it comes easy. And so for me, it's first defining what you want for yourself. And that's why I give the yes, no, maybe so list and like what type of activities do you like to do? I just had my TEDx talk finally come out. I did it in August, but it just takes them a long time to put it
Yeah.
out. And I walk people through like the 4 steps of that because after you figure out what you want, and how you want it, then you have to communicate that. And so many of us are terrified to communicate it because of the image it will paint of us. And I call it sexual impression management, or
Okay.
sexual reputation management. So we
Hmm.
have this idea that if you have a pristine sexual reputation, you'll get all these things that are promised to good girls. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
Men love all kinds of women, all and women love all kinds of women. There are people
Yes.
across the sexual spectrum who are loved, right? But we get
Yeah.
a certain message. So if you can start releasing yourself from that message by pushing up against it, choosing courage, I think it helps you break that veil a little bit more and a little bit more. You'll be like, oh, I said this thing that I thought was dirty, and my partner responded in a really favorable way. Maybe keep trying. But also, if your partner doesn't respond in a favorable way, how do you still feel that sense of courage and confidence? And sometimes it's just because your partner's been swimming in the same misogynistic, patriarchal, sex
Yeah.
negative water that you've been swimming in. And so you guys have to learn some things together. And sometimes that's not your right partner because you want a
Yeah.
person that won't shame you or blame you.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say one of the great gifts of a good, solid relationship is feeling like you can be completely yourself.
Yeah.
And even when things go awry, it's still funny and brings you closer
Yes.
together. So you feel free to be your authentic self. So I
Yes.
think the way you put that is really beautiful. Um, how do you made me think about resilience because things don't always go well,
Mm,
right?
no, sometimes they go
And
terribly
sometimes,
wrong.
yes. Um, how can they grow resilience that, this is not necessarily the wrong path, but something you want to do? It just, they get embarrassed about what
Hmm.
happened. They're like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore because I don't want to feel this way.
Yes.
What do you say to building that resilience and confidence, like if it doesn't go the way you planned?
I think that it also depends on who else is in your community because sometimes when we talk about sexual conversations or communications, we talk partner to partner, but who are your friends? Who are
Yeah.
the people who love you unconditionally, who are not in romantic partnership with you, who you can share that story with, and they'll be like, "Girl,
Yeah.
okay, this is what I did when it happened," or "Let's try it again this way," or "Here's a pillow that supports this," or but
Mhm.
but
You need the group chat.
you need that. But I do think women encouraging women, I'm thinking about women in particular for this, but I think it might
Yeah.
apply for people of other genders. Women encouraging women when you've had one of those moments that kind of knocks you off your feet or makes you feel bashful or
Yeah.
insecure can really boost each other in a way that sometimes your self talk can't. But I am big on talking to yourself like you love yourself. So if you have one of those moments, how do you explain it to yourself? How do you write about it? How do you think about it? How do you talk to yourself about it? And I think it can be really, people think it's really corny to have positive self talk, but I also know that there are so many of us walking around with the mean girl inside of us and
Mm.
like retire her and choose the person that's
Yeah.
going to hype you up.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be your own bully. Is
Mm-mm.
something that I like to say. Well, and I think too, I think you bring up a really important point, the role that friendships play in
Yes.
not only this area, but in life in general. It's how you if you're swimming in the ocean, it gives you like a touch point to
Yes.
stay grounded and know where you are. Because a lot of times when I'm big on community. I'm big on talking to your people about what's going
Hmm.
on, because when you have those close friends, they'll be the first to help you laugh about it and be like, "Well,
Yes.
that's hilarious. This is what happened to me," and
Yes.
I'm still, you get that, so it kind of busts the tension or the embarrassment you might feel that this is normal. So a lot of times when you
Yes.
have that reaction, like, "Oh, something's wrong with me. I'm terrible. I'm an embarrassment." But when you start to learn this stuff happens to everybody, I think it releases a lot of the shame or the bad feelings about it. And your friends are so good for really sharing that you're not a
Yes.
weirdo. I mean, you are a weirdo in a great way,
In a
but
great
not in the way
way.
that you should be embarrassed about.
Because who wants to be
Yeah, I
normal
mean,
all the time?
yeah, no, weirdos are great. And it is just so important. Like, I know my friends, we all support each other, and like ridiculous stuff happens and we all like laugh with them and, give you advice. Or
Hmm.
if your partner's not being maybe a great partner, they'll be the first to say, no,
Yes.
that was inappropriate. Please don't feel
Yes.
bad. He's in the wrong here, talking about a man.
That's so true. I love a good like group of I've had my best friend since high school, and we celebrated our 20-year friendship thing a few years ago. And just being able to meet up and talk junk and have a good time and laugh at ourselves then
Yeah.
and now, I think that is a really great home space.
Now, you talk about something pretty extensively in your book that I would love for you to talk to anyone listening about. You use the phrase good sex recipes. What is a good sex recipe?
So your good sex recipe is your seasoning. So that's if you could describe good sex in 3 words, what would it be? Those are your good sex seasonings to make the experience flavorful. And then your staples. So your sexual activities that you prefer. Those are the things that are on your yes, no, maybe so list. So your
Okay.
yeses could be certain types of sex. It could be sex in certain places, like your staples, the things you know for sure are your thing. You put
Hmm.
those together and you create your recipes because it could be any constellation of it. So maybe my seasoning, like I said, is transcendence, but I want transcendence with oral sex. So that's
Hmm.
my recipe for today. That's the recipe we want to
Okay.
enjoy or eat today.
So it's like, what are the different options and feelings available, and how do they come together for what you're looking for today? Is that right?
Yes. Yes, because it can change, right? Like what I want today at 43 is different than what I wanted at 33. What I want tomorrow is different than I want today. So I
Yeah.
think having a good menu means that you have lots of recipes that you can select from.
Okay. Yeah, and hopefully it's a wide array of options.
Yes. Mhm. And to your
Yeah.
point
And well,
earlier, that means you gotta try some new things. Like, there are things that maybe you haven't even been exposed to, but in a trusting environment or an environment of curiosity, you can try some new stuff.
and two, for people that are in long term, because you made me think about this when you were talking about when you were 33 versus now. For people that are in long term relationships, I think it's pretty well known, and some of it's chemical, like you have the dopamine of a new
Mhm.
relationship and things are wild and crazy. And then when you get to be in a long term relationship, you start to transition to more of a partnership, real
Yeah.
love, like what's going on chemically changes.
Mhm.
Um, but your sex life changes quite a bit for a lot of
Yeah.
people. And I think some people find challenges in a long term sexual relationship to keep things fulfilling. What
Yes.
kind of advice do you have people that have been with someone for a very long time? What are some things they can think about?
I think the first thing is to think about how normal it is to change. And so sometimes we hold ourselves to the standard of new relationship energy, and you're basically on cocaine. You know what I mean? Like it's just you can't hold
You're not in
yourself.
your right mind.
You'll find
Oh,
out in about 18 months, 19, 20 months. But so not holding yourself to that standard of new relationship energy because it can be very addictive. Um,
yeah.
Understanding that there are ebbs and flows in desire, shifts in perception of what is good to you. Your body changes. And so, you might want different things or need different things than you used to need 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Being willing to evolve with each other, and to compassionately evolve. But also, novelty can always be added in even when you're with the same partner. Sometimes people think novelty means being with someone new when it could just be changing the room that you're in or changing the positions that you usually your go-tos, adding some
Hmm.
things in that you both have been curious about that you hadn't had an opportunity to try before. And then the third piece is, and this is really like basic advice, and people feel a type of way about it, but you do have to plan sex. Like, I think when we
Yeah.
start off in relationships, people don't see that as planning behavior. And so I think about my first few dates with my husband. We've been married almost 10 years this year, in the
Wow.
first few dates, and I'm like getting shaved or getting waxed and picking out a lingerie and all that's planning behavior. So even if
Yeah.
it seems spontaneous, like in fact, I had hours worth of preparation for that. I planned. Same thing at 10 years later. It's like, okay, if I want to bring that same intention into creating a good sexual experience, then I need to be planning for it. He needs to be planning for it. So there you don't want to lose out on the romance. You don't want to lose out on the intentionality of it. And planning really can help with that.
Okay. Yeah, that helps a lot because I think that's something almost everyone deals with. And I don't know, sometimes I kind of wonder if, sometimes it goes on for so long. And then I feel like that makes it harder to bring
It
back,
does.
when
It
you like just
does.
give up.
I think when you just said that, it hit home for me because couples I've worked with who feel like they've gotten so far beyond where they used to be that they feel embarrassed in front of each other or nervous to get back to each other, like bashful about
Yeah.
being nude in front of each other because it's been so long. I've worked with couples like that. And a part of it is like, can you take it slowly to get back to where you wanna be? You don't have to go from, "It's been 2 years since we had sex," to, "We should be having sex every day, so we're living up to
Yeah.
this should version of us," but it's like,
Right.
"Can you undress me and oil my body?" And maybe that's the thing
Right.
we do, so intimate
Yeah.
behaviors that might not be sex in the sense that they wanna get back to eventually.
I think this is probably one of my biggest lessons in my 40s. That I think so many of us, when we're trying to fix something or make a change, we approach it like a light switch.
Oh my
Like we think,
gosh, yeah.
I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to flip a switch and I'm going to do it and that'll be better. When the reality is, healing of any sort, growth of any sort, it is rare to find the thing that doesn't take a decent amount of time. And it's more
Yes.
like a muscle you grow at the gym, step by step, day by day. And, I think we just get so impatient with ourselves and with situations, and we either eject, we break up with them, or we're like, you were talking about jump straight to the whole thing when maybe just do something small, take it slow,
Yes.
and that's okay.
You hit the nail on the head, and that is like a go-to point in the book. I'm like, you're not gonna read this book and then tomorrow have good sex and the
Oh,
best sex of your life. I wish that was the case. I wish I could make that promise, but that is not how
yeah,
human behavior works at all.
yeah,
And so it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes time, and to give yourself and your partner the when you said working out, so I'm just getting back into the gym. Last week, I had my first full week of going to the gym. I'm very proud. I fall
amazing.
off every year at this time,
Mhm.
so I'm, like, trying to keep it going. But the same level of compassion I give myself and I need for myself to say, "I'm gonna try it again. I'm gonna get back at it again." that's the same level of compassion you have to offer the person that you're choosing to have a
Yeah.
long-term experience with. If we're talking about long-term, sexual
Yep.
relationships, it's like, okay, if you're asking for a change, that change may be 3 months, 6 months, 1 year in the making. Is the quality
Right.
of your relationship worth it and able to hold that level of patience?
It turns into a spiral, because you're right, it's also in other ways of our life, working out or parenting,
Mhm.
where you expect it to happen so fast, and then you start to
Mm.
spiral with, "Well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? So many other people do it." And you just spiral and get so hard on yourself, and I really think I wish this is what I wish more people knew about sex and other things that maybe you're trying to change. It's okay to go slow, and actually that is very normal, and if you make an immediate switch, that's maybe actually not the best route to go, because did you really process
Yes.
things? Did you really make a change, when it happens
No.
overnight? I don't think
And
so.
it's not sustainable. Like, even if you did make a change, and I realize, tell me if you see this, people who make changes like that in an abrupt fashion get very evangelical about like the thing that they made the change about. And then 1 year
Everybody needs to
later,
do it.
right, and then 1 year later, you fell off too. And like, yes, you did, because you did not take the
Yeah.
time to practice it, to have those falls off and come back to it again. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it feels like white knuckling. Like, this is what I need to
Yes.
do, so I'm gonna force it to happen, I'm gonna make it happen, but so
Hmm.
many things in life, that is not how it works. You cannot
No.
white knuckle your way into almost anything.
Mm-mm.
It's more like, ballet dance, move by
Yes.
move and getting
Yes.
where you wanna go. Okay, now I wanna ask you about this. This is a hot topic. That I actually asked for some questions. There were quite a few people that asked about this, and I also see it on, like, my, dating forums and things like that because I'm divorced, and so I'm in some, women's group where they talk about dating. It's come up
Are
more
you
than a
having
few
the best
times.
years of your life post-divorce? I hear so
I
many women
am.
who are like, they are having a joyful time.
Yes, I'm in a long-term partnership now, but at the beginning, it was really like an awakening because I never
Mhm.
dated. You were
Yeah.
talking about in your 20s. I never dated. I just like would meet someone, we were friends, and one day we were in a 3-year relationship. Like I never dated before. So I learned to date in my 40s.
Yes.
And before I met my partner, it was a lot of fun. I mean, there was a lot of, we were talking early about things going wrong. Things went
Yep.
wrong all the time.
Yep.
Because I think that's kind of what happens when you are really experiencing something for the first time.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I think that it is kind of a message I do wanna give to people. It's never too late. It's
No.
really not. Um, if there's something that's important to you, you are loved, you are desirable, you are attractive, and you can have that. You really can.
Yes.
You don't say no to yourself.
That's right.
But all I have to say, okay, coming around the bend,
Sorry, sorry.
um, I know it's true. It's an awakening, and I think a lot of times for divorced women, it's waking up a side of them that has been dead for a very long
Yes.
time for a variety of reasons. And I think it is one of the most, I think sometimes the married friends are like, "You have lost your mind," but to me, it's really beautiful because
Yeah.
it's what healing looks like.
Mhm.
That's what it looks like to take charge of your life and figure out what you want, what is important to you. And sometimes that involves being a little wild.
And that's right. Be feral if you need to. Be in the wilderness for a
Yes.
while.
Yes. Yes. But quite often I see posts or I've talked to divorced women who, and I have strong feelings about this. I want to see what you say. Well, they'll start dating someone and I really like this person. They're so great and I enjoy being with them, but the sex is terrible. And
Mm.
usually people will comment on that post and say, oh, if it doesn't work now, it's never going to work. Kind of aligning new relationship with good
Mhm.
sex. And most people say, get out of there. I want to wait and see what your opinion is on this. What do you think when someone says that to you?
Yeah. How does your partner respond to correction? That's
Yeah.
my cornerstone of it. Do they respond with defensiveness and doubling down on the shit that they were doing that was not working for you? Or do they respond with curiosity, asking more questions, trying new things? That's the difference maker. If they respond like, this has worked for X, Y, and Z other people that I was with, and it should work for you, you can go ahead and let them go because it wasn't good
I
to you
hate
anyway.
that. I hate that because that does happen. People will say it'd be like, no, I'm good at sex. And so.
I'm gonna
It's
lie
like,
to your
what are we
face.
doing? Resumes? What?
And the way I have to tell so many men, like, "You've likely been lied to and had fake orgasms." Like, because then like, "No, because everybody else." I'm like, "Did everybody else?" did everybody else, you know? So if they're like, if they come at it with that, their ego is so defended that they're not going to be able to be teachable and they're not going to want to learn. Let them go.
Yeah.
Throw them back to the manosphere where they belong. But
Yeah.
if they are welcoming that, like, oh, I want to know what you like. I want to figure it out
Yeah.
because this is fun to me. I enjoy. y- Of course, it can get better. Absolutely.
Well, and you're missing what sex really is, which it should be different with, every
Yes.
person you choose to be with. It should be different. If you are doing the exact same thing with every person that you're with, you're not actually connecting to them. It's
Mm.
not personal. It's
It's
just,
not mechanical.
yeah, it's like going and get your groceries at the store, which, for me, that sounds terrible. So I wouldn't want to do that.
And that's the thing. It's like, so if I'm using a metaphor of cars, like you don't fix every car the same way. Certain cars have specialized tools that you can't
Mhm.
even get into a Mercedes without a specialized tool. Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so, like, so why would you think human bodies, which are much more intricate and complicated with the emotion and spirit that comes with it, could be
Yeah.
that mechanical where you could use the same tool, the same behavior, and it can work for everybody? That is naive at best.
Gosh, I've got a story for you that I think you're gonna be entertained by. So this is years ago. I had a friend who was divorced that was a man and was heterosexual, and he was out there dating. And he's like, "Oh, I've got a story for you." I was like, "Okay." He was like, "I started dating someone, and really, he shouldn't have been telling this story at all, but he did. We had sex, and and you're not going to believe this, she orgasmed 10 times. It was so great." And I was like, "Who's going to tell him?"
Ah,
I was like, "Oh, is that really what happened?" I didn't have the heart to tell him, but I was like, I think we all know what really happened there.
God. And we gotta stop doing that as women. Like, we
Yeah,
gotta let it go with the faking
right.
orgasms. I love the
Yeah.
younger generation because they're like, it doesn't even count if it wasn't good to me. I'm like, that's right,
I
Megan
love
the
that.
Stallion. I love that for you.
I'm so inspired by the younger, and I know people have a lot of shit to say about like Gen Z, but I am very inspired by them. They have such
Mhm.
great ethics. They stand up for themselves.
That's
They
right.
are not willing to, work themselves to the bone for who
Mm-mm.
knows what. They don't fake things. I did listen to a podcast a few months ago where one of the hosts talked about how she had made a decision that she would never fake an orgasm again.
I know that's
And I
right.
know some people like I think for a lot of people that is actually revolutionary because it has
Mhm.
kind of become a very common thing that at least women do. And I remember I was really I love that she said that straight out and directly. She's not ever
Mhm.
gonna do that again. I was like, "That's great."
I love that. Mhm.
Yeah, and goes to what you were saying earlier, you don't have to have an orgasm. There's all different ways to have
Mm-mm.
sex. As we're wrapping up here, what do you wish more people understood about sex?
I wish more people understood that they were worthy of sex that is good to them and for them. You're worthy of the things you want, and it's okay for you to ask for all the things you want and to discuss, to process, like how you get your needs met, how you express yourself sexually is really a tough thing to do. I don't want to diminish that, but the work of it is something you're worthy of, so that's always my go-to.
Well, and it connects really well to what you were saying earlier. Um, Take little steps.
Mhm.
It can be yours, but just take some little steps and you'll get
Yeah.
there. All right. My final question for you is something I ask everybody, and I either get answers that are funny or pretty profound. And I'd love to see how you would answer this. In life, what do you know for sure?
I don't know that I know anything for sure. I think that because I'm a scientist, I don't think anything is 100% certain. I think that there's always room to change my mind.
I love that. I think that's actually really beautiful. You always have the room to change your mind or grow or make a different decision. Well, Dr. Candace, thank you so much for being here, sharing your story and your expertise with everyone. Where can people find you if they want to work with you or hear more from you?
You can find me on drcandicenicole.com or on Instagram, Facebook, or threads at Dr. Candice Nicole. And please feel free to check out My book, Good Sex, it can be found on Barnes& and Noble and Amazon and wherever books are sold. I always invite people to ask their libraries to carry it so that people can have access to it for free. It's on Spotify. And my TEDx talk is how to season 4 steps to season your sex life. So feel free to check
That's
that out as
amazing.
well.
I know that's a bucket list thing for a lot of people, so that's amazing that you did
Yeah,
that.
it was a
Just
joy.
so everyone knows, I will link all of this in the show notes, so you don't have to scribble this down. It'll be easy. Just go to the show notes. You can click on things and check it out. I will highly recommend Dr. Candice's book. It's super practical. It's practical both mechanically, but most importantly, mindset wise, which that drives everything else. So I think it's a really useful, helpful book. Thank you so much, Dr. Candice, for
Thank
joining
you.
us today. And thank you to everyone who's listening to the Happily Never After, especially those of you who are on your own journey. We are rooting for you. We're rooting for you to get there. We hope you have a great week. Thank you so much.